Moving on to our next discussion, CISO strategy for OT and IoT, risk and threat management. For this, we have our moderator, Gaurav Shukla from Deloitte. And panelist Sudarshan Rajagopal from Shell.
Thank you.
Gomeet Pant from Vedanta. Rakesh Viswanathan from Cyberbit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. All of us had lunch, didn't we? Right. Bring some energy. All right. So, first of all, I think we should all put our hands together for the organizers who have set up such a beautiful platform for us over the last 2 days to exchange what is happening new in technology, what are the new cyber trends which are coming in, and the atmosphere has been electric. So let's give them an applause. There you go. And I personally was very, very pleasant. I mean, very happy to see the young and younger crowd. Younger, by the way, I'm referring to myself. To see such a enthusiasm in relation to cybersecurity, new trends which are happening. They're participating in so many CTF contests and the cyber quizzes all around the booth. It was a beautiful sight to look at. If you look at over the last 2 or 3 years, the evolution of technology has been unprecedented. Can you imagine a day without your mobile phone? How many of you can imagine a day without a mobile phone? I can't.
Can you imagine? It would be dreadful.
Yeah. Wonderful. That's where the risk management comes in. All right. And see, how many of you have encountered a situation where something you're not able to locate at home, and that you think, why the damn thing does not have a calling feature in it? Yeah. Right. So. And then look at you after work, you come back home and then ask Alexa, turn on the music that you like. It does it. Isn't that a beautiful experience? Technology has made it happen for you. You're driving a car, right? And you are about to pay for the premium, and you say, okay, my premium is going to be X amount. Suddenly your insurer gives you a call. Your premium has gone up by some percentages. Why? Because you had been driving rash. Right? Can you imagine the changes which is happening in technology? Similarly, in the plants or manufacturing industries, etc., who had ever imagined that those PLC, the big units of PLC, can ever come to the cyber centers or SOC, security operation centers, for monitoring purposes? Technology made it possible. So, if you look at, we are living in the world where the technology is leading our life. Therefore, it becomes very important to understand how technology is leading our life and what are the components which are comprising this technology. So IoT and OT, which is industrial IoT also, is where all of it is becoming very possible. Technology, the trend says that by end of 2020, there would be 3 times IoT devices on the earth than the number of human beings. So it's phenomenal. So what we're going to do over the next few minutes is to brainstorm with our eminent panel and understand from them what their thoughts on dealing with the risk that do come in with the changes that has happened in technology, which is enabled by IoT and OT per se. We're going to be making very interactive. I'm not going to go and bore you with my boring questions thrown at any one of them. You all please feel free to ask any questions. It is not going to be that after towards the end of 5 minutes, I'm going to say, okay, floor is open for asking questions. Ask from the word go. Now, before I start, I thought I'll just ask each one of them to give their perspective as to what they think, where the risk comes from in this IoT and OT enabled environment, and what are some of the basic steps that a chief information security officer should be looking at, should be considered while he or she is preparing for the strategy for the next 2 to 3 years? So Sudarshan, why don't we start with you?
Thank you, Gaurav, and that was quite an insightful opening. Thank you. So, I think let's start from a private life and move it to the industry where I am, and I would like to take it that way. Simple reason, because he started with certain very interesting facts when he said, how do you imagine a day without a telephone, without a cell phone, or if you lose something and you instantly feel, why can't I have a tracking system on that? And that's so real. That's like real issues what you look at it. And something flashed in my head. Wouldn't like to say that, but yeah, most of you might have seen the movie Uri, and there was a mention somewhere that the nurse or the supposed nurse says that I had put in tracking devices on and that's a very good thing for an Alzheimer's patient, because I've seen them up close in person, and that's something very good. So that is a very good feature when it comes to IoT. The flip side of that, from a private life perspective, is how many times would you want your locations to be tracked by people? And a very good example was Fitbit, which had location tracking, released the data of one of the most secure areas in US, of US base, somewhere in the Middle East, globally, because all the military personnel were wearing that, and they were comparing each other how they're doing. So, this is the flip side of it. How we intelligently use it, when we use it, and what we need is what you look at it. And if I go back to a very interesting example, there was this social media group called as Orkut. I don't know how many of you know. My grandfather used to tell me there was something like that. I have never been on that platform. Apparently, in that, you could go to anyone's, so it was scrap, like what you have wall on Facebook. It had something called a scrap, and you could go and scrap to anyone. Can we be friends? Yeah? Hey, beautiful, what's your name? And then you get irritated. People could download your photo and create a fake profile. Not that it's not happening now. What Facebook brought in was feature of security. You had the same evil, but you could control it much better. And that's what I would be looking at IoT going forward and using it in a perfect way. The way we use it in the industry is very similar. Now, PLC, or the old technologies, what we have, which is coming to the cyber room. How do we test it? How do we locate it? Who all can see it if we can see it? Something like what we have is the fleet of trucks which are going, can be looked from Shodan. Is it good? Is it safe for us if you're targeted in various areas? Should that be in Shodan, or should that be private? That is something which you would look at. So these are I'm just talking from one of the privacy areas which I look at it, and I think that's something which I would primarily look at it. The other way of looking at it is the authentication or the brute forcing. Now, this is a device what you're talking about. Does it have the right policy right from the beginning? Does it have the right architecture right from the beginning? Or can you brute force it? If someone gets a hand on it, I was attending the EVM, the Desi Jugaad kind of one of the sessions, and how well, if you have a physical access, what can you do with these devices, which belongs to your company, and how can you get into the company, or what are the vital informations which you can get from there, were the few areas which I think I would be looking forward for.
Certainly. Thanks, Sudarshan. Gomeet, some of your insights based on what your experience has been setting up the robust structure in your organization or otherwise?
So I would also want to, start off with how IoT has changed our personal lives, because that's where people start to understand, how IoT is creating a difference. A lot of these devices that we use today are IoT enabled. You mentioned Alexa. Alexa is an example of an IoT device. So we all know what these devices are capable of in the personal space. However, when you come to industrial IoT, they're not that powerful. So when it comes to the security of these devices, I would say that, some certain terms that you don't hear in the IT world start applying, like there is a PDoS, permanent denial of service. You make the device dead by attacking permanently. So while there are new terms coming in, a lot of times the modes will still remain the same, the kind of threats will remain similar, if not the same. And at the same time, the protection mechanism, what you need to do, or what, controls or the thought process that you need to build around it also emanates from the very same source of CIA. I mean, you start from there. What I need to do to prevent the confidentiality, to protect the integrity and availability of information. And to top it all, we need to also see, what kind of devices we have to put for what purpose. Is it within field communication? Then you need to put up a certain device which is maybe part of a fog network. So some things that you need to think differently. But from when you come to security, while I said CIA is equally important and it's remained the same, you would also want to think differently because of the way these devices interact with each other, the way these devices have been today form factored with the limitations and capabilities in security. And push for getting the right kind of technologies in place at this point of time.
All right. Thank you very much. So, from your perspective, what are some of the trends? I'm slightly deviating from the conventional question that I posed to both of them. What are some of the challenging trends that you're seeing, and how do you think the current landscape of the products or maybe the services which are coming up as a bundle or as a package can deal with some of those challenges in industrial IoT space per se?
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thanks for having me here. It's a very good question because I'm not a CIO, so I cannot talk about what is the trends and all this stuff. But
which is why I kind of
I completely
gave the
agree.
question.
Exactly. So first of all, before moving forward, I just met with a couple of youngsters and I had a great chat with them. Just want to understand the crowd before I answer this point so that it's relevant for you all. How many of you are SOC analyst here? Is there any SOC analyst here or SOC analyst, right?
Yeah. Few of them, yeah.
Few of them here. And you handle IT alerts? Both. Is there anybody who's here in this forum who touches OT alerts specifically?
Yeah.
One gentleman over here. So this is exactly the problem is. So the IT-OT convergence is something that we are currently talking about, but which is not yet happened. So if you go to the industry and if you look into the SIs or the Big Fours or anyone for that matter, there are only very, very few. Say for an example, Deloitte as a matter of fact are the only big giants are the only one who touches OT alerts. Apart from that, there is nobody that you can send out OT alerts, and OT alerts are not meant to be sent out because once you send out, it's vulnerable, right? So there are a lot of people, lot of service providers, MSSPs who can walk up to you and say that I can handle your IT. But we have not reached that point yet where somebody can come and tell you that I can handle your OT and it's been outsourced yet. So this is one of the major play which is there in the industry. And the second thing, I don't know whether I should be telling this in this forum, but that's the truth of the fact is IT people don't understand OT and OT people don't understand IT.
Yeah, which is so true. Yeah, which is so true.
And it's nothing wrong about it and why should somebody know everything, right? If I'm a sales guy, I go do my numbers, right? That's what I know. I don't know what is happening in development, what's happening in engineering, what is happening in all the other departments around me or marketing for that matter, right? So the matter of fact is the IT-OT convergence is happening and it will happen. The only thing is either IT is going to own it and OT is going to accept that IT is going to own it is the debate which is going on right now. That's what I would say.
All right, great. I thought we can say it physical meets digital meets physical, right? Yeah. So there's a convergence which is happening. So I'll just draw Gomeet's attention on it, the point that he mentioned that not to literally mention it that IT guys don't understand OT and the other way also is true. But then in your organization, I'm sure you would have come across such difficulty, such challenge to explain to the people in the mines, in the factory, to why it is important to embrace security and what it is. If it is not dealt with in the right manner, what could be the repercussions of it, and then providing some level of control back to the IT people for the monitoring purpose, for alert understanding purposes. So how did you deal with this challenge when you were hit upon this?
So fairly well pointed out. OT folks are very territorial. They don't want to leave it. But what he's mentioning that IT folks don't know OT and OT folks don't know IT, that's 2014, I think. That's when we first started auditing. They didn't know us, we didn't know them. First time we sent an auditor, it was like, what are you doing in my area? And why are you using your IT tools? And that's when the auditors were also not sure what to do, at least for us. So they did an IT audit of OT systems. After that, after a few iterations, we also realized something is not right here. People keep talking about PLCs, controllers, sensors, actuators, and all we see in our audit report is MS 1710, Microsoft vulnerability, switch-related vulnerability. Something is not right. So we decided that, enough is enough. We formed a forum. And that was 2017 when we had people sharing accountabilities from the production divisions, from the projects division and IT. So IT got a seat as a functional SME, but that was kind of it at that point in time. That, if they need an advice, it would be more of a pull. They will call us. Otherwise, we can be at the bay. They were very territorial about it. But in the last 1 year, because the attention of our internal audit function has also shifted towards the OT security, we are being called more often, and sometimes it feels like, when something will go wrong, they'll find me to be accountable for it somehow. But we've been there now, and we've been pushing common standards of learning. As a matter of fact, I'm just coming back from the site where we had this engagement with the instrumentation team, the control room engineers. I was talking about cybersecurity in the OT area with them. The push has been such that IT people are now cross-trained into OT in some ways, like I am a GICSP certified person. Same ways, OT folks we are sending for CEH. So, we're trying to do that. We're trying to bridge that gap so that we can have a common language of understanding. At the end of the day, ownership for overall run and maintain will be with the OT folks for our enterprise. But there will be a confluence, and there would be more and more SME level information passing from us to the OT folks.
All right,
so that's
great,
happening.
Great. You mentioned two very good points. The common language of understanding in relation to cyber threats, because cyber threats are equally dangerous on either territory, whether it is IT or OT. And the other thing I think you mentioned was a common standard of practices, or I'll just give a different flavor, common standard for risk management, let's say. Right? So when you apply that common risk management standard, both as well IT as well as OT, I think the comprehension as far as risk perseverance is concerned, it becomes quite palatable on both sides, and therefore the engagement becomes much more smoother. You did mention about, I picked up that was a bit of a funny topic, although it was quite sarcastic when you said that we did IT audit of OT systems. So I thought, I'll just pull Sudarshan here before I just throw it open for the audience. In his previous avatar, before taking over the current role and as risk and controls advisory lead for Shell, he was also global vulnerability management lead for Shell. So I thought, I'll just seek some of his views on carrying out vulnerability management related exercise in OT territory and or PCD for that matter, and what has been some of the interesting challenges that were encountered there. Sudarshan.
The first answer you get is no. You can't touch it. It is difficult. It's very sensitive system. These are very old. You do not know what you're touching. If you touch it somewhere wrong, it might just burst. So that's the first thing what you hear across. We could do a few of the sites which were getting re-engineered and places like that. So we could do a few tests, and we found phenomenal stuff. I mean, phenomenal. For a hacker, I think that's like the gold mine. That's like the platinum mine. That's like uranium, right? It was like pleasure for us, and we went deep and deep and deep. But the best part of it was that the other party, I don't know if it was top-down driven or whatever, the other party was also ready and willing to listen to what needs to be done. While saying that as one part of it, there are certain practical challenges. If the devices are not updated for a very long time, to patch it, to remediate it, is a Herculean task, and business can't wait till then. So these are certain, flavors, I think, which I can throw in the open right now, which we faced about. But yeah, you don't know what you find there, and once you find there, it's like, craving for knowledge and going, snowballs after that, and that's what we looked into when we got out into this.
Sure. Thanks, Sudarshan. So, as I promised, I just took initial 10 minutes maybe. I'm just throwing it open for all of you. I know it is a topic of great interest. Feel free to ask the panel any question. I'm sure none of the moderator would have given you such a pleasure. Use it. Go ahead. OT, I heard some OT people. Go ahead. There is a question.
Okay. So, we've been dealing with OT for at least the last 20 years. Okay. OT's been around since day one, refinery one.
Okay. Question is, have we really improved anything on the security side?
So I think that's, I will take the answer. I don't know. I mean, this is my personal opinion about it. Yes, OT has been there forever. And I think for the largest period of time, we were running, as we say, that nothing's happened, nothing's gone wrong. No one is touching it. Why to get it done? I think the way I look at it is IT has gone into a maturity level of security, and the way the formats are, the way you can remediate, way you can find, and that cycle is pretty mature. The other part of which now people are looking at, and it's also an IT kind of an electronic area which can be manipulated, is the OT area. And suddenly for last so many years, I think 5-7 years, you're seeing a shift of OT security. So this goes back to, how you started the information security in IT itself in late 90s, early 2000, where a firewall was considered as the best solution to getting into what you have today is a plethora of devices, what you have, charades of services which you run every day. These are the kind of things what you look at from an IT perspective, and that's what you would be looking at OT at some point in time. So I think it's a journey, and we will reach there. I know not much has been done, but I'm sure we will reach there.
Okay. Rakesh or Gomeet, would you like to add to that?
So I would definitely say that things have changed a lot. The change was directly proportional to the newness of the sites we were trying to address. The ones that are mature assets, those which were commissioned in 2000s, there we couldn't do much. So we have more detective and deterrent ways of protecting after we've given awareness that, something wrong can happen. And for the new sites which were commissioned after 2010, because the systems that they were used were relatively new, and in OT area, 10 years is like mint condition. So we were able to put in reasonably high level of controls, and on those locations we've been able to even set up concepts like DMZ, access controls. We've been able to do all of it just because of the newness. Again, I'll admit that. And now we have certain policies and procedures that are there. First cut was more like an IT policy, search control F, IT control V, OT. We did that, but then after that we realized that that's not the method. So after that, it's been all, we've been able to mature in terms of processes. If you'll ask me where are we, if I had to rate from 1 to 5, we started off with a 2, we would be somewhere at 3.5. We're not there, but we will be, because we know where we have to go.
Okay. So in the OT, most of the technology is actually built and developed by OEMs, correct? So let me ask you this. Why does the industry not ask for security by design built into the product? Okay, from day one.
So I don't know how many of you are aware, but from the OT space, there is an open process automation forum that's there.
But that's playing catch up. You know that.
It may take time. In fact, they are trying to rely on 62443 as a standard, but then 62443 has forever been underpublished. So for a lot of them. So, but still, if you ask me that, can we push the OEMs, a body like an OPAF, open process automation folks, can actually push for that. Because every time we have to go back to the OEMs, and mind you, we are not the ones who got their services in. So we are not the influencers anyway, from the cybersecurity standpoint. So we formed a committee only to deal with the OEMs and ask for certain controls.
Why not? Why aren't you not influencing the procurement decision? Because that's where you make the decisions around security, particularly with regards to OT.
It's somebody somewhere else who's made that decision 5 years back that, this is how we'll go with this plant. And then, we've invested so much. So in our case, if it were a firewall vendor acting unruly, we'll just throw the firewall. How are you going to take Yokogawa out of a system if it weren't listening to you? You can't do that. So we have to coexist in some way. So we put more deterrent controls rather than getting the OEMs to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is you have a point there, but there's a pace at which the industry also functions, and we can push it to certain level. And I think the ask is there from us to the vendors, and the vendors are putting in efforts. But the cycle there is not as quick as an IT cycle is. As you said, in 10 years you'll still feel it's mint condition. So I would believe that the efforts are there from both the parties, and we are getting there. That's something which I would want to believe.
Yeah, just to add on to what he was saying, that I've been lately meeting a lot of CIOs, CTOs from the OT side as well as the IT side. So there are a lot of critical infrastructures, manufacturing, and all these people that I've already met. There is one thing which was in common was all the OT networks were completely isolated. Right. So, and that is exactly what they thought that security is. Even you might have a fancy designation, but you would also not have an access to it completely. But things are rapidly changing. Okay, and CIOs are seriously looking into not running the business the same way how traditionally it's been running, and the regulations or the Indian regulations are also becoming. Little stringent, I would say, in terms of bringing everything on board. I think CIOs are working towards it. I think it's not a very long days that we have to pass to reach there. I think it's going to come very soon.
I would support what you're saying. So I think if you look at from the core IT systems perspective also, it's only about 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago when people realized, okay, security by design has to be there, privacy by design has to be there. And it took a while, about 13 to 14 years it took there. With OT, I think the awareness is increasing, and because we have the use cases established with IT, I think it would be much quicker than how it happened in IT. But I think there's a lot of pushback that comes in, and many times I think OEMs do say that it's very native to us, the knowledge about this is not available in the market, so attack vector or effort is not as much as it would be there in the ID system, etc. But I think we'll get there as what I'm getting a sense from, and I know for the fact that all communities are pushing towards it. Nobody wants to be in the newspaper for the wrong reasons next day. Yeah, I think I'd support that. Yeah, you had a question. The gentleman in the blue and white shirt.
Yeah, I just like to make a one point, and then I'll ask question also. What I see, basically I come from GE, General Electric, so we do use a lot of OT infrastructure. We are the OEM as well for many of the OT infrastructure. So I actually wanted to revive that.
He has all smiles.
No, I just want to respond to this group also, that there is a huge push from the OEM side as well. Now earlier the devices used to come with no authentication at all. Now, at least they are reaching to the basic authentication.
Can we use a chair here?
So what happens here that now, because the demand is there, that's why OEM has to change, and there is always threat that reputation of a such OEM will always be questioned, because some equipment will go to somebody's hand and they will show it in DEFCON or somewhere that this equipment is faulty, and you are able to get the data or whatever. So those kind of things are changing. The question what I actually wanted to ask, that when you do a risk assessment in your organization, for example, if you're using OT, do you consider the public safety as an aspect? For example, my perspective, OT, most of the OTs are used in a public safety kind of conditions. So in a normal risk assessment scenario, we will consider CIA, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But there is one more dimension get added, is a public safety. which is a bigger dimension than the CIA dimension as well. So, I mean, is there any effort has been done, or, I mean, just for your perspective?
Yes, I mean, I think that's a great question. And if I would recall last year, again, when we were around the same time, the same panel, this did come up, and we concluded that in addition to security and privacy, safety risk also must be considered when dealing with IoT or OT, for both, because it is applicable both places. Straight answer to that is yes. Let me just go across to these gentlemen to find out straight away from them whether they have already included in their risk assessment or not.
It's interesting you asked, because like I mentioned, I was last week at the site, just the week that's gone by. And one of the things that I picked up this time was, rather than calling every time cyber security, information security, I called out a few times cyber safety, because that had them catching attention. And so in a few weeks back, I was there somewhere attending a training, and then the trainer there said that, one question to ask the folks out there is, in how many ways can you kill people with this system? Then their mind gets reeling that, what can we really do with this system? And then what is to be done to block those from happening? So cyber safety is something that we can push as a term. And we're trying to, because you have to tell those folks that not only can you bring out oil, but you can kill system. Hence, human asset, which is the most important asset around this place, should be equally protected.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the example, connected cars, right? Steering wheel is no longer in your control. Accelerator is just, in somebody else's control. You wouldn't bother about security there. You wouldn't bother about privacy there. What we would bother immediately about is your safety, right? Same thing if your wearable devices, right? Your vitals are being captured by the doctor, and basis that he's prescribing certain medicines to you. If the vitals are going wrong, it's a straight away health risk or health hazard, right? So yes, that indeed becomes, in addition to traditional security and privacy risk, the safety risk, which will come and start becoming more and more prevalent as the adoption of IoT and OT, goes more and more. I said, I had offered you can come and sit here.
No. ZigBee protocol is actually used in most of the smart lighting or medical baby monitors, or even in industrial things also. And that protocol is 25 or 30-year old. And it is used widely because it's cheap. It is no authentication. It is not encrypted traffic. Everything is whatever you like to call in the security space. That is not there actually completely. But that is widely used, and everybody is using it. That's where the most scary thing that, now the next attack will not be on IT or anything like that. Somebody will attack the lighting of a city, or somebody will attack the
I think that's what he was referring to when he said that, and that's exactly his point was. I come from an
very simple. The OT space has been living on the basis of security through obscurity.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it is. Yeah, in this country we call it Ram Bharose. So I'll give an answer. I come from an organization which is called a Shell, and human safety is of paramount importance for us. I mean,
somebody just did it.
Yeah, they just didn't want to hear me. So I think anyone who's visited our facility, Gaurav, his team, whosoever, they would actually concur to what I'm saying. And I told in my previous answer that we weren't allowed to touch the PCD domain for a while because they didn't know that what can kill a human being. Because these are old, like ZigBee is there. You don't know what you do, and you don't know what is the repercussion over somewhere else. So that's the reason why you want to curtail the environment. You want to quarantine it first and test it. And I think no company, let it be OEM, let it be the user or whosoever, does not want this blot to go in there as a newspaper on them. And no one wants to take it in as a human as well. So I think that is of paramount importance for everyone when it comes to especially the IoT and OTD.
Yeah. You had a question.
Yeah, I mean, what you said about the awareness, from the awareness standpoint. So we all know that IT is absolutely matured. I mean, it is way beyond the maturity level. InfoSec is definitely, there's enough sufficient.
Still people use Telnet.
Yeah, but a lot of introduction of disruptive technology is already kicked in. So from that perspective, IT is quite matured. We have seen the various different phases of evolution in InfoSec also. from the automation standpoint or any other advancement or modernization standpoint. There are a lot of enablement or empowerment is given by the usage of various different forum or certifications to enable people, the community and all. So is it something in OT, we have basic certifications like in IT, be it a network, platform, storage, database or any other side, and same in a cyber security also, be it an operation side or development side or forensic or any other thing. So in similar to this line, have we introduced like one of the forum, what you just mentioned about some open forum, so some standardized certifications for the community so that we get enabled through those certifications, and then interest can also equally gradually can step up, and then awareness can be created in the ecosystem. So on the same line, I have a question to any one of you, if you can throw some light on that.
So on IoT, there is a lot of consortiums which have got set up globally as well as at local level, and those are the bodies which are trying to spread awareness, and then through the social media by holding multiple campaigns and by running the chapters, etc. That is happening on IoT, and which I think is happening more than OT these days. And again, I think it boils down to the same point that OT is still kind of a very closed community as opposed to IoT's usage and its pervasiveness. Okay. But having said that, in OT also, I think the SANS, if I know, they were coming out with some certification and training also they have got, and I think that could be a good start point if somebody wants to. Yeah, if somebody wants to establish, more credentials around that and get more awareness around that.
Yeah, but my take on that is the CISA was probably one of the earliest movers in the IT space.
Right.
And then IC Square came in with CISSP.
Yeah.
And suddenly a year down the line, you saw a barrage of that coming in. Right? You're like, what do I do? And then people were like, do I do this certification? And then started climbing up. So I think certifications are good. But for me personally, I think they have lost relevance at some point in time. You give any certification to our people here, they will crack it in no time. And they would want to, then there will be expectations that I have scored better, so I need to get a better pay or a better job. That should not be the idea. So I think it's a good way to restart to relearn from the mistakes, what we have done, and do a better job there from a certification perspective. So there are talks happening. There are trainings which are for sure there. But if you're talking an industry body certification, I think if the industry is somewhere working and if you have influence on them, you should talk in these terms.
Yeah, I think I would agree with what Sudarshan just mentioned. I think with these consortium chapters, industry bodies talking about it more and more, I think buzz would create it, which is important. The creation of the buzz is very, very important. But then the purpose of certification, determining the purpose of certification is very important too. Why do I want to have a certification? We know a lot of cases where people just go CEH certified, EC Council CEH certified, or some hacking certification, etc. they have obtained. But then when it comes to really, doing the job which is required, do they have it in them? So determining the purpose of certification is very important. It is only for enhancing the resume or enhancing the skill set, thereby contributing in a better way to the cyber fraternity. So that I think is very important. All right. So
thank you.
So we heard about from SOC resources, the expectation is not to know about OT and IT security because these two are two different landscapes. We also heard about the convergence model that we are on the verge of incorporating. So if the convergence will happen and we have a connected network, how a SOC analyst will, identify cases like lateral movement from IT to OT or OT to IT if SOC analysts don't have visibility on both platforms? In my view, I believe this is the time where we should not just scale in terms of our technology, but we should also converge at the people and process both.
So I think you have answered yourself if I understand the question correctly.
Yeah, and that's the reason I'm sitting here with IT and OT expertise both.
No, so I think yes, when the conversion, the consolidation happens, you would have technologies which will address both the, and there would be companies who would invest in people to get this done. So
people investment is very important. We can't ignore it.
So predominantly, when you talk about security as a portfolio, it's a very niche area, So it's very difficult to get people who with these kind of skill sets. That's why it's very niche. So, and this is a gray area, and this has not been here. Like it's a global problem. It's not only in India. It's a global problem, and attrition in these areas are pretty high because there is a need always. So there will be lot of technologies which is coming in day to day. I mean, in the last discussion that we saw today, we are talking about SOC. I mean, in the era of last era, it was only NOC, right? Now it was NOC, then it became SOC. Now it's all about going into threat hunting and data lake and all this stuff. So this is an evolving area, right? All these years we were talking about prevention. Now suddenly detection has come up, machine learning is coming up, artificial intelligence is coming up. And how many skill sets do we have today where we can go ahead and hire people? I come from a security organization and I hire people left, right and center, and I understand what is the difficulty these CIOs and CTOs can go across in getting the right skill set to manage the...
Yeah, but you also need to understand, no? There's business which is to run. You're supporting arm. So you can't infinitely invest on people or technology or something to go ahead and never get, it's a never ending story. So you need to have a trade-off somewhere.
All right. Just one point. We keep hopping on about CIA, but actually, if you take a step back, most of you know what COVID is, right? Most people here have been exposed to COVID at some point. Yes? Anyone who doesn't know? All right. How many of you actually understand what is the information criteria or information principles of COVID? Yeah? Do those principles only cover CIA or not? Much more. Much more. That's where the problem lies. Everyone's focus is on the CIA. So for your point, when we started this in Shell 20 years ago, we started the information principles, not CIA. That's why we looked at OT. That was the fundamental shift in how we looked at the problem. So we were hacking OT first based on those principles, then based on CIA. And you don't always have to test to understand. When you apply information principles from an audit perspective, remember you always start with design. Have I designed security into my solution? If the design is wrong or it's incomplete in line with those principles, right? You don't even have to test. The part that was hilarious is when we started to ask the very basic questions around those information principles to the OEM vendors, they were flawed because they hadn't thought through the information principles as the starting point of how they designed the solution. That's why you didn't even have to test to know that there was a problem. Do you understand the issue?
Yeah, which is correct.
So I think you're right there, and the OEMs would not, because that was not their security was not their prerogative at that point in time. We bought in. So I think what he said, and he bought in aspects to it, which I think now they're thinking about, talking about a
They only really started when the 4 oil majors got together. Exxon, Shell, Total got together and said, we want this.
Yeah, I mean,
there is a start, that's a positive part.
That's always been the trend. I mean,
that's
somebody
where it
has to come together and then form and then start driving them. That's always been the trend. And I think security by design, as you were mentioning, I think you were emphasizing on that point. I think that is a point that to be driven home by each one of us here. That security by design has to be there in the equipment and has to be applied by OEMs there. Yeah, you were saying something, Rui?
The point is, it doesn't matter what the technology is. Yeah. Okay, today it may be OT, tomorrow it may be machine learning, whatever.
Absolutely.
The principles don't change irrespective of the technology. So if you go back to first principles, you have to go back to first principles.
Absolutely.
And evaluate the technology from a risk perspective. Then you can have the right conversation.
Right. Absolutely right. Any other question from the audience?
I just saw you that the gentleman is from Shell. So everywhere is more of the energy, utility, oil and gas segment. So just again a basic question. Apart
from the OT perspective, are we focusing on other areas like, or you see some use cases like healthcare, which is like public safety, right? So healthcare is one of the most important. So I just took the baton from his hand and asking a question more on a public safety side by covering the health and care domain, or the natural disasters which happens, the country specific, because that's the biggest danger.
You were there in the session yesterday as well, in the same place, I guess.
No,
we had the same question.
3 days.
I'll take that. So on the health tech, from the device and wearable perspective and all the equipment which are being used, advanced equipment which are being used in the hospitals and the healthcare systems, healthcare organizations, So I think they have taken an advanced leap. One of the reasons for that, I would like to believe, is the regulation. Yeah, because they are in more regulated industry as opposed to maybe other critical infrastructure that we just refer to, which is where I think they have taken an advanced leap as opposed to others. And there are privacy by design and security by design principles already being applied by some of them, right? No. But then more work is required to be done still. And I think it is ongoing story. It is ongoing. It has to continue. It's not that you have done it one time and it is done forever. But yes, in the health tech, that work is already is happening by some of the large ones. The smaller ones are still maybe catching up, but that started. SBD and PBD both are started there.
Were you also talking about variables? Was your question more around variables as well?
Yeah, not variables, the different verticals, like as we talked about the ENU or the healthcare. So the focus is required equally on other segment like healthcare or the transportation side or the public safety side.
Oh, yes. So
absolutely.
I think we did touch upon a couple of use cases on public safety in the transportation when we did mention about the GPS or the OBD hacking, etc.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's where it comes in the automobile.
He also said that we look at the basics of security. It's not about an industry at the end of it, right? The industry is just top of it.
My sins, many years ago, we were hacking telecom systems in 3G space.
Right.
BlackBerry was being hacked stupid. You didn't even know about it. Why? Because we're having an OT-IT debate about whether the technology will actually. So we were having the same issue
in telecoms. Right. And when we switched from 3G to 4G, that became obvious. You could not survive unless you fixed the security in telecoms. Yeah. Was one. Banking, same story. Okay. It just happened different points in time because the technology. See, the minute we opened up technology, the minute you started using IP technologies. And this is where the main issue. TCP. When the industry flips to TCP/IP, you have to address the security. Exactly. Because you can no longer argue that you can now have security through obscurity. Right. You now have to understand the principles of the technology that you're using and then go through it. Now, all of our industries, one by one, has slowly been switching, okay, in terms of the technology that they're using. Why? Because everyone wants connectivity.
Yes.
The connectivity is what's driving the threat landscape. Okay?
Right.
If you understand that, it doesn't matter what industry you're going through, you have to understand what's triggering the paradigm shift on security front. And it's twofold. One is the design for connectivity. And even for the OEMs, what's happening with the OEMs, they've been pushed to give more connectivity to the equipment.
Absolutely.
The minute they do that, they're using TCP/IP because that's a low-cost solution.
There you go. Yeah.
The minute they use TCP/IP, you have to factor in the negatives of that. So that's what's driving a lot of this conversation. Now, whether that's oil and gas, whether that was automotive. We had the same debates on SCADA. Same issues on SCADA.
Same in PLC.
Same in PLC conversations. Yeah. Okay. You're going to see now in building management, the automation systems around building management, the BMS systems.
Right.
Same problem. The protocols are completely insecure.
Absolutely.
Okay. So it's slowly changing. The difference is the speed of which industry is actually moving in that direction. Now, for oil and gas, for example, it may be too late. I tell you why. A refinery lasts 20, 25 years. Okay. So if the OEMs don't actually push the change fast enough, those refineries will get shut down.
That's correct. Yeah.
Too late. You're going to live with a vulnerability for 20 years.
Right. And then he just referred to telecom. So if you notice, in India, we witnessed 3G, 4G, very recently, right? And then I don't know how many of you have got exposure to telecom. In 2011, Department of Telecom had the first time released the security conditions as part of the UASL, their licensing, right? And that's where there was scramble in the entire telecom industry that, okay, we have to satisfy the security conditions for core network also, right? But then look at it that from 2011 till now, there has been some major changes. And then right now, if you go and ask the telecom OEMs or the operators, they are much more relieved. Reason is this, that most of their equipment are now IP enabled. Right? So they know, okay, while the threats can be identified much faster, vulnerability can be identified much faster, it provides me an opportunity to plug them also. Earlier, they did not know where the threats lie, where the vulnerabilities are, and how to fix them, which is where everybody was struggling, and a lot of conversations were happening with the regulators at that point in time. And the CEO AI and then all the bodies also had been stepping in that point in time. But I think fundamental lies, regardless to the type of industry, is whether you are doing the principles in the right manner, identifying the risk management, risk areas in the right manner, and then applying these strategies around it from the design itself, not at the much later. You had some point.
So that's a good point. Another small thing that you say that regularization side. So for the BFSI, RBI is there, but when on telecom sector, like you talk about the DOT or TRAI or any other governing body.
Yeah.
So do they also follow so aggressively the way RBI does the audit or the regularization for the BFSI segment?
Oh yeah, telecom. So is there anybody from telecom? Ask him. There are penalties. There are penalties if they don't meet the conditions. There are penalties.
It's not only telecom. Just to add to that, it is not only telecom. Like I said in the earlier session where I was sitting here only. And I said, as per the IT Act, there is an IT Act in India, IT Act 2000. If you don't have reasonable security practices for personal sensitive data, then there can be compensations and penalties and liabilities on you. It is minimum 5 crores, which goes to the IT adjudicator of the state. Maximum, we don't know, it is incident based. So there are a lot of laws which are in place. But what I just wanted to start of the question was, the problem with our TCP communication, the challenge is that we do not have a system to identify when the data comes in a form of a packet. We don't identify, we're not able to identify. We do that identity later on, maybe at the application layer. It's too late, or maybe a firewall or whatever comes later on, What if we can build an identity at the network and the transport layer and only allow those packets which are identified, otherwise drop the packets?
Is that not how it happens?
That's happening.
I think we do have technologies in that space.
Yeah, that's happening already. That's happening. May not be, I don't know if you have not seen that happen.
No, the network and the transport layer.
Layer 2 and layer 3 also. Layer 2 and layer 3 also it is happening.
Layer 3 onwards we have.
Transport layer.
You are referring to a physical layer.
Transport and session.
Application also, there is application layer 5.
Application 5 also.
Yeah. Strips down the...
So what we're saying is zero trust policy. Do not trust anything. Add identity at that layer. Add trust and security policies to that.
That's how it happens. Yeah, sorry, I'm being asked by these people that I have to wrap up. He has come to me twice, indicating from there. It's been a very interactive session. Thank you very much. If you still have a question, panel is around. Rui is around too. So feel free to get in touch with them. And you can also tweet your question with the hashtag Deloitte@nullcon. You'll get the response there. Now, just to conclude, I think 3 or 4 takeaways. One is security by design. Do things right at the beginning, regardless to which industry, which OEM, which technology. Second is the culture has to be built. Right? Culture has to be built, sensitivity has to be coming in. The third thing is, which I'm borrowing the term from Gomeet, he mentioned the common criteria of risk identification and common set of language or common standard across, whether it is IT, OT, or wherever it is. And the last one is setting the tone at the top. Right? I think those are the 4 takeaways that I have, and as I said, feel free to get in touch with the panelists, and before they rise, just give them a huge round of applause. Thank you.